Okay, next guy. I'm trying to remember other names. Zvonimir. Tell me about him. I know nothing about him.
Zvonimir Ivisic. So he is the guy that I think has gotten the most highlights, essentially. He is the guy that has gotten the most social media push because he's 7'2" and he has some dribble and shoot ability. Doesn't have pass ability. We'll talk about that in a second. But 7'2" can actually like kind of run off of some screening actions and knock down shots, like in a really interesting way. Blocked, I think, 3.4 shots in 19 minutes per game in the European U20 championships last year, which is like obviously just an absurd number. He is for a Kentucky team that currently has a lot of injury questions, let's call them. Aaron Bradshaw has a foot injury. I believe Ugonna Onyenso also has a foot injury. Guys that really struggle to come up with guys that really struggle. Guys that are 7 foot tall sometimes can struggle to come back from foot injuries. Let's call them because it's always a concern if there are 7 footers with foot injuries. So I just don't know what to think there, and I don't know how exactly Ivisic will play in that Kentucky scheme. It's worth noting that the Kentucky scheme in Canada at the Global Jam was much better. It was a pretty free-flowing offense. They shot threes on 39% of their attempts. It made a lot more sense. And Ivisic makes a lot of sense in that construct. I don't think he will beat out Aaron Bradshaw. I don't think he will beat out Ugonna Onyenso. And I don't think he will beat out really even Trey Mitchell, honestly, is a 23-year-old that's on that roster. He's a real project. His pick and roll defense is a mess. He is like super flat-footed all the time. He goes for blocks all the time in a way that is like completely unnecessary. He is a foul machine. He averaged like 9 fouls per 40 minutes in the Adriatic League last year. He has so much work to do, but there's so much upside to where I think that if he can actually learn the fundamentals and mechanics of Kentucky, there is first round upside long term. It's just not going to happen this year. And I know that people are like really excited about him in that way, but he's like a lot more like Bull than he is like Victor Wembanyama kind of guy right now in terms of like the fundamentals.
Yeah. It's funny because you had told me a little bit about him before we talked today. And I think even more hearing about him from you and from talking to some other people as well, like I don't understand why he's going to Kentucky from a basketball sense. Respectfully, like I think like just that has never been the kind of guy who necessarily thrives at UK. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out because that is if you just go down the list of all the bigs that have played at UK in the last decade, like the closest player to that is like Terrence Jones. And that's completely different. Like that's
I mean, look, like I wrote about this with Kyle Tucker today. They've never taken a guy like this. Like truly. Dirty Dancer brings up the highlights had some Poku vibes. That's kind of true, honestly. Like they do have Poku vibes. And honestly, like Poku entering the NBA as like a rookie, I don't think he would have been an effective college basketball player. Like it took him a while to get to where he is now, where he can like be on the court for NBA minutes. It's going to be really interesting, I think, to watch how Kentucky utilizes him and if they need to utilize him. Like they might be able to like have him just as a 10-minute per game rim protector who comes in and just like fuck shit up for 10 minutes a game and 5 minutes a half and just tries to block everything and fouls out in that time. It's a good get for Kentucky because they needed depth. Like they truly needed to go and find somebody who is big, because Bradshaw and Onyenso, I believe, are the only 2 guys on the roster over 6'9". And for those guys both to be hurt, you need to go get depth in any way you can. And Ivisic is a really good depth piece to go get. I just think he's more of a project than what has been portrayed in the media at this point. maybe is a fair way to put it.
Yeah, no, I think that that's fair. And part of what's interesting too that I like I liked what you said, because even for me, I have to check myself sometimes when talking about college, because like you mentioned with depth, I think it's so easy to get caught up in your head thinking in terms of NBA and the depth that what that means, because I think depth in the NBA is a lot more about, maybe consistency is the wrong way to put it, but I think like consistency and role and what a person brings. And I think so much about college to me is like having options and matchups. And like you mentioned, like being above 7 feet in college, it doesn't make you an automatic ability to play guy, but like against a lot of schools, like, okay, you can just have impact by being huge, because there are some teams who can't match up with that.
You can, if you also have good fundamentals defensively and can play in ball screens. And I'm worried about him being able to do that right now fundamentally, but he has the tools to do it, to where I think if he is there for 2 years, he will be really good at it. It's just that he probably needs to be there for 2 years. If he's only there for this year, I don't think Kentucky's going to get much out of it. But if he's there for multiple years, I think they actually probably will get quite a bit out of it.
Okay.
It's just that we need to, like, I think it's a great get from a depth perspective. It's a great recovery from Kentucky, given these injury concerns. It's just that the timeline is maybe a little bit slower right now than what maybe has been portrayed.
Yeah, just being realistic about where he's at as a player. That makes sense.